Depending on how it's measured, travel risk may often be perceived as minimal to the business, but it can be enormous for the employee. Southern Africa's largest economic hub, Johannesburg, should take note of recently reported malaria cases and deaths outside of South Africa's official malaria zones. Well, so says the Regional Medical Director of International SOS, Dr. Charles van Lochenberg. These incidents highlight the often neglected risk of business travel in South Africa and the continent.
When you look at the individual, risk of death or risk of illness, wow, that's kind of the ultimate risk if you think about it. So it really depends on which lens we're looking through when we measure the risk for the organization. But certainly from an organizational point of view and a direct economic cost, we can measure evacuations, for example, or admission to tertiary care in a country in the tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's a relatively small number of organizations that appear to be taking travel risk seriously. Certainly there are the star performers, but I think if we looked across the average, we'd find that a huge number of locally based organizations with some reach into Africa would benefit by really upping their game in terms of the support service that they're providing for their travelers.
I suppose the question then becomes, why is that the case? Why do we have such a small pool of businesses actually taking this seriously?
It's a function of lack of awareness. It's a function of, it does have a cost of training, cost of providing, cost of health screening, cost of providing the necessary cover for the travelers. However, it's also really about what the risk is of that individual traveler having a failed assignment. A failed expatriate assignment in a foreign country can be north of $1 million cost, is a very rough estimate. And if we now look at organizations saying, okay, we've actually got an economic reason to get involved in providing travel education, travel awareness, management of potential health risks when people travel, they're actually going to get a return on investment for that. Companies need to pay attention as to where their travelers are going. So malaria is a good example in this context, in the sense it's not a disease that we are typically aware of here in Johannesburg, even for medical professionals.
But from a business perspective or a business context, what is travel risk all about?
If one broadly divides risk for a traveler into security-related stuff, and we can imagine all of those things, the risks to you as the individual, the risk to you as your business when you travel. The other big silo is medical or healthcare. In fact, if you've got a workforce that is outside of the boundaries of comfy home urban living, you're exposing them to risk. Not just something obvious and tangible like you're sending a guy into a mine. It's more about the risk of actually sending someone into a space that's not their comfort zone. I think a key way of looking at it is often that people's behavior changes when they travel.
What factors should organizations actually think of when it comes to travel risk?
Legal and regulatory implications from someone knocking at your door with a failed inspection versus just that is the appropriate thing to do in that country. Then we look at the human resource impact. Personnel that feel well looked after operate better, work better, and that's good from something as basic as morale through to a more professional delivery of your individuals. And then each person at the end of the day, me as the medical guy, is a potential patient. Needs to be paying careful attention to how not to become that patient. What do I mean by that? Well, we talked malaria earlier. Where am I going? What do I need to take? Am I allergic to it? Blah, blah. Occupational health. Yes. In other words, am I fit to travel? Am I taking my heart disease with me, my diabetes with me?
Now, having said that, what advice would you recommend?
Best thing one can do is think about how to put the emergency doctor on the couch at home watching TV. So the way we get around that is, first of all, tons of information. Number two, look at health of the individuals. So think through offering occupational health screening basic health conditions, through to maybe something a little bit more formal, proper health risk assessment associated with their work environment.